Hi there.
Hi.
Thanks for coming out.
So sorry, I thought you were going to shake my hand.
I am going to shake your hand. It's very nice. Nice recovery. What's your name?
Kathy.
Kathy. Hi. Thanks for coming. So welcome. This is one of the talks I've never given before. I was kind of hoping that it would actually be a completely empty room, because in this talk I'm going to share my blunders. Idea in your heads before we get any further. I'm going to call on you, if you're willing, sometime in the next hour to share maybe one of your stories and what you learned from it. So you know a little bit about me. I've just come back from 10 years sailing and working my way around the world. We arrived back in Vancouver in September, and we have our boat in False Creek. We worked for 5 years in Singapore, and it was a magnificent experience. I was working there as an executive coach and a trainer and a speaker and a yacht skipper and just about anything that I could think of. There was lots to do there, and it was great fun. My main passion in life, it's to help people at work and in their lives make what they do an expression of who they are. Make what they do an expression of who they are. Because I believe that's how we find the most satisfaction in life. So sailing has been a crazy part of my life. I don't know why. I grew up in Ontario. We were miles from the ocean. My parents didn't sail, and they didn't care. Started in my 20s to build a boat. As a matter of fact, my boat partner in that venture is right here in this room, Paul Clark. Foolishly, we bought a hull and deck kit, we moved it up to Whistler, and we built a Dash 34. We sailed it around for 5 or 6 years. And in my 30s, I started soaring because I just loved the idea of sailing through the air the same way you sail across the ocean. Because just as surely as the winds blow this way and this way on the surface, they blow this way and this way in the sky. And you can get out on those things and you can ride those waves. It's amazing. Started to fly power planes. I built this little guy, flew it all over the place. It was like having a flying motorcycle. Lived in a trailer. I could haul it in the countryside. In my late 40s, my partner Irene and I bought this boat, and that's what we left in 2005. When I was in Singapore, I was working as a part-time skipper of this boat. It's a big, great, bay almighty trimaran. We used to do charters that had 50 people blowing their brains out every afternoon drinking. We would bring on Red Bull and Scotch. When they came on board with Red Bull and Scotch and their own stereo system, I knew it was going to be a party. Welcome, Bill. Nice to see you. I think I should have a one-man fan club. Bill's been here for every talk. And this is the boat finally we bought after we'd moved to Singapore. We sold the first boat. I'll say more about that later. So here we are, 2005. These are all the friends who've come down to see us off. And here you'll see my friend and partner, Paul, and Darlene, his lovely wife. They were there to see us off. Almost everybody in that picture came and sailed with us on the boat somewhere in the 10 years we sailed around the world. We had 85 people on the boat off and on. It's a West Wind 35, double ender. We call her the Fat Bottom Girl. She was a great boat. Sailed her all the way across the South Pacific, down the coast to first to Dana Point, North California, and then up to the Marquesas, the Tuamotus, Bora Bora, Cook Islands, Tonga, New Zealand, and finally in Australia. We took about 9 months to get down there. And you know, the most amazing thing was we got down there, we ran out of money. We knew we were going to run out of money. And we had to choose between going back to Vancouver or continuing to sail. So we decided we'll stay and we'll try to work and live in Asia. And it was wildly successful. I had no idea it was going to work as well as it did. I wrote this book here, which is about how to get off the dock and do the thing that's important for you in life. I worked there as a coach, I was just saying earlier. And for those of you that don't know, Singapore is this tiny little island country right on the end of the point of Malaysia in Southeast Asia. We sold the first boat. After 2 years, we went to San Francisco and bought this boat because we thought we wanted to keep going. So we did. And we ended up sailing, as you can see, in 2011 and 2012, around and up into the Mediterranean. We worked in Turkey for 2 years. And then in 2014, we left Turkey. 2014-15, we left Turkey and headed out the Black Line, out down to the Canaries, across the Atlantic Ocean, Caribbean, Panama, the Galapagos, Hawaii, and home. You know, I share this story because For me, it's the most amazing thing that life just got bigger when we got out there. And the key seemed to be tearing ourselves out of the fabric of working and living in one place and kind of presenting ourselves into the uncertainty of the possibility. Amazing. Simply amazing. So today we're about sharing our blunders, our mistakes, of which we have some pretty amazing ones. And I do this out of the spirit of we are all sailors and learners here. We will always make mistakes. And like Eleanor Roosevelt had to say, better you learn from other people's mistakes than have to do them yourself. Mistake number one, never, ever, ever, ever run out of beer. This is our pal Al in Hawaii. We're delivering the boat from San Francisco to Singapore. Al's not even going to be on this leg. He goes out and he gifts us 400 cans of beer. Bless his heart. So one of the things we love about sailing is there's a risk, isn't there, of the unknown, the uncertainty. We're not sure how it's going to work out. So we're kind of drawn into some way to the challenge and the adventure. We all recognize this, the Sandbanks. Sort of a gentle introduction. How many of you have run aground on the Sandbanks out there at one time or another? Huh? Lots of chuckling. No, not me. No, I've never done that. Out there, not paying attention. It's miles away. And we all get off pretty easily, don't we? If we can back out of the sand, no harm done to our boats. Not a problem. One day in our Dash 34, I was sailing up here and I was focused. I was watching for rocks. And the chart that I had only Kinghorn Island in the middle of it. And I had rotated the chart 90 degrees. So when I thought I was sailing away from this rock, I hit it. And I hit it so hard, we ran right up on the pinnacle. We heeled over to 45 degrees. And I could look and step down into water that was like this deep on the keel. And I could not get that boat off. I was so charged, and quite a bit younger then, I ran right up the mast, sideways, because the boat was heeled over, and I jumped up and down. That didn't do. So I put the dinghy in the water. I put the anchor in the dinghy, and I rowed it out about 100 yards, dropped the anchor, and it just went, whew, right? Because it's really deep out there, right? So I pulled the anchor back up. That didn't work. Started the motor. Oh, that didn't work because it was actually out of the water because we were heeled over so far. So I'm there in despair. And about this time, a boat comes over the horizon. It's a power boat with a bunch of people. They said, so what happened? We were in the lagoon over there. We heard this noise. They actually heard us run aground. So I said, what am I going to do now? So, well, they took a rope off the bow. They pulled, and that didn't work. So we said, well, we'll try a halyard. So we ran a halyard to them. They took the halyard. And off they went before I tied the halyard off. So bzzz, out went the halyard. Right? Well, that's okay. We've got 2 halyards. So we gave another halyard. And tried it, and the second time they pulled the boat over, they dragged it sideways, and it stood up. So we got off. We were lucky because it went on in a high tide, falling tide. So the moral of the story is, boy, even when you're paying close attention, you need to be thinking about all the things that you might be able to still do wrong. See, lots of people up on the rocks. That hurt because we had a deep fin keel. When we hit so hard, it broke the keel hull joint. Messy business. Now, running aground, not always a bad thing. Here we are. This is Southeast Asia. This is in Thailand. And there's a boatyard up in here that services fish boats. And this is my chart. No information. And it's all shoal. So this was a really interesting experience for me because I had, after years of sailing, a real aversion to running aground for lots of good reasons. So I wondered, how the hell am I going to get in there? I thought, well, it's probably all mud and silt, so it's probably going to be okay. So I started up here, and I didn't have this, but you know what I do now, which I didn't know then, is you can now get Google Earth overlaid on your charts. And you'd be able to see this. Not real time, but you're actually able to see this. In fact, once when we were anchoring in Italy, we went into a bay and it was all weed, except on the Google Earth there was a patch of sand in the middle. We went in at 10 o'clock at night, dropped the anchor. We woke up the next morning. We were in the sand. That was so cool. The way I got here is I felt my way up the river. Go ahead, boat sticks, don't go too fast, back up. Go over here, try again, sticks, back up. So we were able to get in and out safely without harming ourselves. Fast forward. Sandbanks Islands off the coast of Panama. Boy, is this a scary place to sail, because there are reefs and rocks everywhere. We were there 2015. There were 5 boats lost in that sailing season. People were not looking, not paying attention to their electronics, and probably not looking over the bow of the boat. And this is the price that they paid. So there was 2 visible derelicts there, and they've been totally picked over by the local people within days. So, by God, when you're sailing in this kind of waters, you've really got to be watching on the bow, because lots of times we see reefs where there's nothing on the chart, or coral head bommies that come up from the bottom, that if you're not on the bow or up the mast and the sun's not at the right angle, bam, and if you hit something like that, it's really very serious. Okay, my moment of shame. This is on the coast of Sicily. It's a beautiful Mediterranean day. We're sailing along. We're sailing along downwind. It's about 2 or 3 knots of breeze. And there's a rock, and there's this little gap, and then there's the land here. And I thought, well, just sail through that. Perfect. You know, there's a beacon and everything, so it's got to be good, right? And my crew's going, are you sure you want to go through there? And I'm going, yeah, it'll be okay. Don't worry. Did I check the chart? No, there's a mark there. Why would I check the chart? When I checked the chart later, this is what I found, right? Oops. Now, the interesting thing is this beacon doesn't look anything like what the chart suggests there, but that's a, boy, there's for, foul ground, don't go there. And I did. And we came in, downwind, hit the reef, stopped, it turned us sideways, got the main up, and no head sail. Yeah, so we pulled the main in, it heeled the boat a little bit more, it dragged a little further onto the rock. I went, oh God, this is going to end badly. And then I ran up on the bow, and I could see the water was a little bit deeper off the bow, because it's probably not more than 5 feet where I'm on the boat. So we started the engine, and we managed to rock it ahead, and we kind of this way, urged our way forward. Then I went back over, and I could see over here, there was another little deep well, so we backed it into that. And after about 10 minutes of kind of seesawing it back and forth and pulling in the main and turning the helm and sweating bullets, I managed to kind of drag our way through this gap. Oh, stupid. Did I feel stupid? I went, all I had to do was look in the chart, duh, and I would have been okay. And it wasn't like we were saving thousands of miles going there, because this little rock is only about 500 meters long. We could have gone around it, duh. And look, other boats are going through there. Why can't we? Not too bright. Not too bright. And that's what we did. Looks like I used my head for it, but no. So this is in Turkey sometime later. So we were lucky. It was fairly cosmetic. So one of the things we learned, at least we were going slowly. It was a dangerous situation because we went in there going downwind, which is always harder to get off if you're being forced on by the wind with the wind behind you. So we were lucky, and it was stupid. Totally unnecessary. It happens. People get too close to shore. They get caught in the seas, and then they're up on the beach. Let me give you an example. This is the island of Phuket here. This was the King's Cup race about 2010, I think. So we're there. We're visiting. We're dropping friends off down in this area here. They're getting on an airplane and going home. The King's Cup fleet is anchored up here on this little beach here. Here's what it looks like at greater scale. And there's over 100 boats. And they've just been off racing all week. And what do racers do at the end of a racing day? Drink. Well, they drink. And what else? They go ashore and they party, right? So the whole fleet basically bailed out of their boats, gone ashore, and left their dinghies out there. We checked the forecast, and we thought, Jesus, if we'd been smart, all we would have done, all we had to do is just duck around the point and come up the other coast, because it was forecast to come in hard from the west. Yeah, but it can't be that bad. So I thought, well, at least what we'll do is we'll go down and we'll tuck ourselves in behind this little island here. And sure enough, went to bed that night, pretty uncomfortable, because I know this weather's coming. We're kind of hanging out, and I'm laying there in the bunk, and it starts to blow, and the boat's bouncing around. And by 2 o'clock, it's so rough, I've got the engine running, and I'm on deck, and I'm watching, because I'm waiting for the anchor to break out and head for the beach. And while I'm sitting there, I see another guy starting to drag. And he's about half a mile away. And I can't get him. I can't get him with the horn. I can't get him with the radio. It's too rough to get the dinghy in the water. And I'm watching him drag for this rock. Finally, he woke up when his boat was about 100 meters from the beach. He just, I don't know, woke up, got up, started his engine, and managed to get out of there. But it was so rough, I didn't even want to take the hook up to chance motoring out of there. I just hung in there, but I was ready to motor if we had to. I want to share this with you. This is footage from the King's Cup 2010. Everybody's playing in the water, having a great day on the beach. This guy's dying. Look at his rudder. Ugh. A couple of them did, yeah. Some of the boats were just a write-off. Of course, what happens is once you get into shallow water and the seas are lifting you up and setting you down, boy, you've got seconds to get the power on or get the anchor out or get towed out of there, because pretty soon you're starting to pound and jump, and then it just drives you with every wave. It picks you up, carries you a little more, drops you down. Picks you up, carries up a little more, drops you down. And then you turn sideways because you're no steerage, and that's the way boats will drift. And pretty soon you're beamed to, and you just kabam, 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 and you're on the beach. And if it's coral, wow, it's messy. That's how you lose your boat. Let's come back to good old BC. So we're in Tofino, here on the west coast of Vancouver Island. Beautiful, beautiful day. Irene and I have been sailing around the island, just loving it. Hey, we're getting this yachting thing down pretty good, you know. We own the boat a couple of years, and we've been anchoring and haven't had any trouble. We thought we'll go up this inlet here from Tofino, because Tofino is here. We'll make our way up this inlet, someplace where it's nice and quiet. We'll drop the hook, and we'll spend the night, and the next day we'll go sailing. So that's what we did. We went up there and found our way in there, checked the depth, threw the anchor off the bow, tucked into a glass of wine, another glass of wine, had a nice dinner, went to sleep, sleeping in the bow of our wee boat. Slept so soundly, and as is usually my habit, I woke up 3 o'clock in the morning, and it was very deeply foggy. But now I could see this navigational red light like 100 yards away. There was no navigational red light when I went to bed. So I ran up on the bow, because obviously we were not where we had put it to sleep. And I looked off the bow, and I could see the water running past the chain. So I thought, oh, okay. Wherever we are, apparently we're anchored again. So ran down below, and I started the GPS, and I woke up by Irene and said, you got to see this. You've never seen this before. So she got up. We got the GPS going. This is where we were. We had drifted 4 nautical miles between, 9 or 10 o'clock at night and the next 3 o'clock in the morning. I could hardly believe it. And we were, partly because we were so lucky, because we could have quite easily, you know, fetched up anywhere along here, all these islands or in this shoal area or here or on these rocks, you know. And the first sign we would have had is our bed would start to do this, right, as the water goes up, because there's 10 feet of tide out there, and we'd wake up and go, oh my God, be high and dry maybe.
So the current kept you right in the middle.
Apparently, or somehow, I don't know. I assume we were lucky. It just carried us safely through there. But you can imagine, asleep in your berth, not a care in the world, a beautiful, quiet night, because there's no wind. It was perfectly peaceful. Wow. So we thought, well, it's pretty foggy. We don't really have to go anywhere, so we might as well stay up, wait for the dawn, and then sort it out. So we woke up in the morning, and there's fishing boat traffic going by us, because, of course, we are anchored in the channel, right in the middle of the channel. And they're all looking at us and shaking their fists. We're going like, drinking our coffee and trying to be invisible. You know what happened? It was weed. We dropped our anchor on a weed bed. And there's not much current, no wind. Just the anchor will hold you there for a while. We didn't set the anchor. We got careless. We got lazy. We got overconfident. And we were lucky. Now, back to the South Pacific. This is a little tropical island atoll in French Polynesia called Mopilia. And as you can see, like so many tropical island atolls, you have the trade winds are blowing in here, and you get this barrier beach where the sand piles up and the few trees. Of course, it's all coral, right? There used to be a mountain in the middle of it, and over time the coral grows around the mountain, creates a ring, and over the many, many, many years, the mountain wears away, but the coral keeps growing. So it basically have a ring of coral. And much of it is at sea level. Some of it has palm trees on it, but even that's fairly low. So these things, in the Tuamotus in French Polynesia, there are 72 of these little babies. And they're gorgeous, and they're really hazardous, because at night you might not see them until you're fetched up on them. And for years, nobody cruised here because of the currents. You couldn't be sure enough of your position to sail into them, so people avoided them. Now with our GPS, we go fairly comfortably in and out and around them. Now the beautiful thing about a tropical island atoll is it's like a great big swimming pool with water. It's as clear as air, and fish and still waters and palm trees and coconuts, and it's just alive with life. It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. So most of the atolls, you seek to go inside and drop the hook there, and it's beautiful. We had been in Bora Bora, and we had set sail. It's not very far away from here. It's only about 2 days away. And we were just exhausted. We'd had company on the boat. We'd been looking after them and getting ready to put to sea again. And we put to sea, and we said, oh my God, I just need to fall down and sleep for a week. So let's go see if we can just park ourselves in Mopilia for 3 or 4 days and just kind of hang out. So picked it out. We arrived in the morning, and there were whales and birds and everything around here. This is the entrance. It's a pass, a natural cut, because what happens is the trade winds, when it starts to blow, they pile water into the center of the lagoon. So it's always ebbing out. Sometimes really fast when it's coincident with a greater ocean ebb, and sometimes not so fast. This is what Charlie's charts had to say about Mopilia. Most treacherous of atolls to approach. A reef awash with a few islands and trees. Uninhabited and unmarked since the last hurricane swept everything flat. So this is wilderness. There ain't nothing there and nobody. And this is the pass. This is what Charlie said about the pass. So it's got 2 white markers. You can see this is the atoll you're looking at there. And this is the river of water running out of the pass. This is the pass to Haru Vahin, however it's pronounced. 14 meters wide. Our boat's like 12 meters long, so it's, there's like a half a boat length on either side. Guard is one of the trickiest passes, a constantly ebbing current of 6 knots, so you can barely make way to get in there, right? We've just had full throttle, and it took us 20 minutes to get inside that couple hundred meters. Whirlpools and coral patches. And this, what is this? This is coral. And it's like a sawtooth concrete, right? It would just make its way through your top sides of your boat like that. So when you stick your nose in here to go in, you're going against 6 knots, you got it full throttle, you're barely making any headway, and you got all this current throwing you back and forth with the keel, and so you're trying to white knuckle it, and you know how a big keel boat, how if you move the wheel too much it starts to roll, and then starts to develop a mind of its own, but you've only got like half a boat length, and you're going through that water 7 knots. So you get a little bit off center, and you were like, heading for the rhubarb. I hadn't actually thought that much about what we were doing when we started to do it. Making the pass sometimes impassable. But when you get inside the water, it's just like air. It's gorgeous. See this little blacktip shark here? It's just absolutely beautiful. It's only about 10 meters deep. So we made our way in to the atoll. I'm sort of going like this, my poor old heart's going. And then I start thinking, how the hell are we going to get out of here? Because if we were doing 6 knots, a current against it coming in at 7, we turn around to go out. How fast are we going to be going through that channel? Because we've got to keep enough boat speed up to keep steerage up. So we're going to be going out of that cut, 10, 12 knots. All that nonsense. So I'm sweating it. I'm pretty uncomfortable. I'm thinking, what the hell are we doing here in this atoll? Got the hook down, went fishing, couldn't catch any fish, went back, and I'm watching the clouds come in. Those high mackerel clouds, you know what they mean? There's weather coming. We just pull into this place, and there's weather coming in. Because guess what? We went into the atoll, which is about 12 miles across, and we pulled up under the barrier reef on the windward side, tucked ourselves up there, nice, smooth water. Well, the wind's going around. It's going to blow out of the east like hell for a day or so, and we're going to be on the lee end of this internal lake with a fetch of 12 miles. It's going to get pretty rough. And that's exactly what happened. By 2 in the morning, it's blowing 25, 30 knots. Poor old conversations. Our boat is like, it's like an angry dog jerking on a chain, just against with all the waves hitting the hull. And I am glued to the GPS. And I've got the motor running, and I'm sweating bullets all night long because right behind us, this is the scene. The inside edge. This is now off our lee side, back end of the boat. That anchor breaks, slips, lets go. We looked like those other boats that you saw in the earlier photographs. We're on there in 60 seconds, and we're toast. Completely unnecessary. If I'd checked the weather before I'd gone in there, I would have seen the system approaching. You get kind of lazy in the tropics. You're not paying as much attention. I'm not paying as much attention as I ought to. So, what's the moral of this story? If the cruising guide says, hey, this is a pretty tough pass, you probably give it a pass, Don't do it. I mean, these guys are smart. Who are you to... What's that? Plenty of other places to go, Keep on sailing. Don't take unnecessary risks. Because you're out there, you've got to remind yourself when you get to be a bit complacent that it's still a dangerous place. And if your boat's as precious to you as it is to all of us, why would you risk it? These guys, Wizard, I just want to share this story with, because one of the hazards out there these days, you know what that is? Can you tell what it is? It's a container. And they're floating around in the oceans of our world now by the thousands. Robert Redford, Beyond All Hope. All is Lost, like that movie. A terrible movie. But it's a real hazard. We saw these guys the first time in South Indian Ocean in Mauritius. And they struck a container here and sank within 40 minutes. They were from South Africa. They'd sailed all the way around the world. They were 250 miles from home. On their final leg, they hit a container and they sunk. Boom, that was it. It happened. Could you see that thing in the daylight? Maybe yes, maybe not. If there's any wind or waves, you wouldn't even know it's there. At night, you couldn't tell. You wouldn't see it. So it's a hazard that exists out there for all of us who are cruising and sailing around the world. And really, I think the only defense is to have some sort of crash bulkhead or protection in the forward end of your boat so that if you do bash in your bow here, it'll be trapped. The water won't flood throughout your whole boat. It'll be trapped. In our boat now, the boat we have now, the whole V-berth is that. So it's back 4 or 5 feet from the chain locker, plus another 6 or 7 feet with the V-berth. So the whole forward, 12, 13 feet of our boat is sealed. So if we hit something with this boat, we'll flood the compartment. This has given me more peace of mind than almost any other feature on the boat.
Did they survive?
Yeah, they did. They got picked up. They had a cell phone and an EPIRB. They had all the right equipment. They got into their life raft, and along came a freighter, picked them up, and took them away. Yeah, so they were okay. I think the only people at risk out there from this, it's not the big tankers. The big tankers would hit one of these and wouldn't even know. We just shoulder it out of the way. But the little guys like us that are sailing our little fiberglass boats or even our steel boats, we're the ones that are at risk.
They fall in the water off of boats, don't they? How do those containers get in the water?
Well, the freighters, I have some footage from one of my earlier talks. If you see a big freighter or a big container ship at sea in a serious storm or a hurricane, it's going like this, right? Yeah. And they just slide off. And it used to be they weren't even tied on at all. Now at least they're tied on. So they still lose some, but not quite as frequently, I think. It's a problem. And I think our only defense as a yachty is to have a watertight compartment forward. Robert Redford, the container hitting the top sides of the boat after the shrouds, didn't make any sense because you run into it. Here's another tragic story. Boat called Iron Horse. This couple I knew well from our time in Singapore, Alfred and Rosemary. This is a steel boat, toughest little boat in the universe, right? They sailed this boat for 20 years. They're on their way home to the UK, and they're sailing through the same waters. Here's Madagascar, Mozambique, pretty much. And they had changed some of the bolts in their rigging. They had gone from mild steel bolts to stainless steel bolts in Thailand. And who knows where that hardware came from. One of the bolts failed. Guess which one? Way up high at the forwarded hounds of the mast. That was the bolt that holds on their forestay. So they're sailing along downwind. Alfred hears this noise, looks forward, and he sees his roller furler and his sail hanging over the side in the water. And he runs up there and he goes, holy shit, we've lost our forestay. So they recovered that, and he immediately set the halyard. He had a spinnaker halyard or something that he ran to the bow, and he tightened that up. And now his choices, it was 550 miles upwind, and the South Indian Ocean doesn't look like it here, but it's pretty rough, and it's usually pretty strong. The trades by summer, they're blowing pretty much consistent 25, 35 knots. So there's no way he's going to be able to sail back where he came. So he had to keep going, which he did. Something fell in the water when his rig failed and wrapped itself around his rudder. Because now he's finding he can't steer. And it's rough and it's dark. And so by dawn, they're in pretty tough shape. The mast is still standing. So they're going to try to see what they can do to steer the boat with the engine. And they try to start, and then they find that the engine fails. It's overheating, and they don't know why. So they've, shroud, steering, and now their engine's failing. So they set their EPIRB off, and they attract a freighter and another yacht. And the other yacht comes and tries to come alongside, can't do it with their own boat, so they stand off. So Alfred and Rosemary, and you got to know, Alfred, he's lean and tough, but he's like 86 years old. And Rosemary's about the same. So these are fit, but they're elderly people.
He's 86.
Yeah. He can barely get in the dinghy. And Rosemary, she basically just went. and found herself in the dinghy. So then they rowed over to this other yacht, Diana, and they couldn't get aboard because these big seas doing this, right? So they called the freighter, and the freighter came over and offered to stand to windward to see if they could create enough lee to settle things down enough that they could get out of the life raft and into the boat. And they couldn't. They couldn't get into the boat. So the freighter says, well, you're coming with us. Back to Singapore on the freighter. Well, while they're trying to get onto the freighter, the boat collides with the freighter and busts off the bowsprit. So now it's totally gone. So that's their last look at their boat. They left it behind, sailed off to Singapore. To me, it seemed like, and they had just been in the shipyard at Satoon for 6 months, refitting the boat. So it seems unfortunate and tragic that all these circumstances would go together to create this sort of cascade of circumstances that ultimately defeated them. And that's almost always the way with boats. And incidentally, the aviation industry, we're taught keep ahead of it by making sure all your systems are always working. Because when the first thing goes wrong, you're probably okay. When the second or third, you're in trouble. So I just got an email from them 2 days ago. They're safe and back in England. One last story. We have arrived in Panama, and friends have joined us, David and Sandy from Nanaimo. And Sandy's this ravishing red-haired beauty rather than dark-haired beauty, and David. And we're off cruising, and we're these little isolated little islands off the coast of Panama, about 50 miles out, very isolated. We drop the hook, we put the dinghy in the water, we row ashore. This lovely beach, beautiful trees, covered with apples. So Sandy's out there, and she's gathering them all up, and she's carrying them in the bosom of her bathing suit. She comes down the beach towards us and says, wow, you should try these apples. These are really good. They're really sweet and really tasty. And so I took one, and David took one, and Irene took one, and we all started eating these apples. Well, they weren't apples. They were something else. There was a pit in there. And they were really sweet and really tasty. But there was something about it that I just didn't trust it. Within 5 minutes, all of our mouths are starting to go numb. And our throats are starting to tighten. And our chests are starting to tighten. And we're all starting to feel a bit stoned. It was like, well, should I admit this in public? It's like magic mushrooms. We were all getting a little bit. So we dropped the apples. We raced back to the boat because we thought we could be in really serious trouble because we are miles from medical attention, days from medical attention. And we're not going to sail back upwind to Panama to get it. They're going to have to come and get us. So we go back to the boat, and by now we're all kind of stoned and disoriented and walking around the boat. And somebody says, well, maybe scotch will help. So we all had a big glass of scotch, and it actually didn't help. But we felt better. So finally, the burning and the tightness started to ease for me because I'd had the least amount. But we were really worried about Sandy because she had eaten pretty much the whole of one of these pieces of fruit. So first thing we did when we got to the Galapagos is we got on the internet. The manchil, from Spanish manchila, little apple, or apple of death. One of the most poisonous trees in the world. The tree is so poisonous that the Spanish used to tie prisoners to the tree to torture them because even touching the bark, it starts to burn and cut through the skin. So, holy smokes. I mean, now, don't we all know better than to eat something we don't know what it is? I mean, isn't that what your mother taught you when you were a little boy or girl? I mean, it's what I was taught. But we did it anyway. And I kind of did it because Sandy, she's sort of the temptress. Oh, they're great. Come on in. You know, it's like the siren. Like the siren. So I want to respect your time, and I need to wrap. So, in a word, sailing is a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to go out and explore our wild, wonderful planet universe. What great freedom we have, and what great responsibility it is to be responsible for ourselves and look after our friends and our boat, and get everybody and anybody home safely. So learn from your mistakes, learn from other people's mistakes, be cautious. Be cautious, be careful. Life is short, then we're dead forever. So get out there now. Thanks, guys. Thank you very much for your stories.